Welcome to CIRA's annual general meeting. My name is Jill Kowalchuk, and I'm the chair of CIRA's board of directors. I am joining you today with the other presenters live from Lumi in Toronto. I am currently joined by CIRA's president and CEO, Byron Holland, and CIRA's corporate secretary, Bridget LeBlanc-Lapointe. CIRA would like to respectfully acknowledge that these proceedings are taking place on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. CIRA honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We'd like to thank you, our members, for joining us for CIRA's virtual AGM. Supporting Canadian communities and residents is important to us. As a result, CIRA is donating $10 to the United Way for each person who attends. Today's event will be conducted in English with simultaneous interpretation in French. If you'd like to switch to French, just click on the interpretation button in the broadcast window. I'd like to start by addressing a few things we have heard from the more than 90 people who responded to last year's AGM survey. The vast majority of the respondents indicated they were motivated to attend for the formal AGM presentation. Additional reasons for attending, including wanting to hear about CIRA and having an opportunity to voice their opinion. We've worked to create a format that tries as much as possible to balance all of these motivators. In addition, while the feedback was mixed about the format of the AGM, we've chosen to continue to conduct the meeting online due to cost and accessibility. As an organization that serves all Canadians, we feel it is critical that the AGM is accessible to as many members as feasible, regardless of where you live. And while hybrid meetings are possible, this complexity adds a significant cost and even more technical challenges. Speaking of technology, we have explored using other technology platforms. We need a reliable and efficient way to ensure that every attendee is a member and that quorum votes are accurately recorded. After extensive analysis, we have determined that the Lumi platform is most effective at providing the necessary functionality. Last year was our first year using the Lumi platform, and a few members experienced issues. We have worked to resolve these issues for this year, so you may notice both changes to both the Lumi platform and how members will participate in today's meeting. We are going to start off our meeting with some housekeeping items and a brief overview of AGMs and governance from CIRA's corporate secretary, Bridget. After that fun stuff, Byron and I will give a brief update on CIRA's activities and insights on how CIRA continues to build a trusted internet for Canadians. This will be followed by a 15-minute general question period. Hopefully, this approach will allow for a meaningful update on CIRA's activities while still getting through our formal AGM business in a reasonable time period. The formal AGM will be similar to previous years and is consistent with the notice shared with members. This will include highlights from CIRA's audited financials for the last fiscal year, the approval of CIRA's auditor, and finally, consideration of 3 member motions, all with member question and comment periods. Members received reminder emails yesterday and earlier today with links to the materials posted on the website. I encourage you to review these materials if you haven't already. There is a link in the materials in the platform under the Home tab. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover some additional housekeeping items. There will be opportunities at certain points throughout the meeting to ask questions, make comments, or move or second a motion. These can all be done by simply clicking on the raise hand button in the platform. Members will then be able to speak once I call upon you. Please keep your questions and comments concise so we can hear from as many members as possible. You may need to allow permission to use your microphone from your web browser. Please ensure you have the correct microphone and speakers connected so that you can be heard and hear the meeting. You will also be asked to vote during the AGM. When a vote is called, a poll will appear on your screen that includes the questions or motion and voting options. Simply click on your selection and your vote will automatically be registered. We will conduct a quick test vote before formally kicking off the AGM to ensure everyone is prepared. Through today's proceedings, we're looking to provide a meaningful update to members while ensuring we meet the statutory requirements necessary for our AGM. Over the last couple of years, we've heard frustration and confusion from some members about the AGM's format and some of the technical language we use during the proceedings. As such, we continue to refine our approach and agenda to strike the right balance. With that, I will pass it off to Bridget to talk a bit more about our AGM and governance more generally.
Thanks so much, Jill. We thought it may be helpful to take a step back and discuss certain corporate governance principles so we all participate in the meeting with a common understanding. During this short overview, you'll hear me refer to the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, which is the main piece of corporate legislation that governs CIRA. In addition, as approved by members in 2022, CIRA uses Nathan and Goldfarb's company meetings as the rules of order for its member meetings. Nathan's was previously called Waynesburg and is adapted for the Canadian context, unlike Roberts, for instance. In terms of how the meeting is run, Jill, as chair, is responsible for preserving and maintaining order and doing all things necessary for the proper conduct of the meeting. In carrying out these duties, the chair must act fairly, in good faith, honestly, and without malice. Absent a few narrow exceptions, it's a fundamental governance principle that the will of the majority will bind the minority. You may notice during the meeting that we use technical jargon, including terms such as quorum, i.e., are there enough members present to duly conduct business, motions and demands. The business of the meeting is carried out via motions, which, if approved, become resolutions. There are various types of motions, and it's important to understand the type of motion so the chair can determine the nature of the interjection. A demand is a request made to the chair to assert a right, and it requires the immediate attention of the chair. Examples include a point of order, a point of information, a question of privilege. While these terms may come off as sounding aggressive, they are the terms used by Nathan's, and it's important for the chair to properly classify an interjection so she may take the correct approach and properly conduct the meeting. You'll also note that various portions of the meeting include time limits. This is designed to maximize the number of members who can participate and to ensure we're respectful of everyone's time. Similarly, there will be question and comment periods for the formal items of business, and it is important that questions and comments relate to the specific matter at hand. This means that the general question period following the corporate presentations is the time for members to ask any general questions relating to CIRA's affairs. During the question and comment periods relating to the financial statements, members may ask general questions about CIRA's financial statements. Under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, CIRA must place before its members the annual audited financial statement and the auditor's report thereon. The Act does not require member approval of the financial statements. Instead, that responsibility ultimately rests with CIRA's board. During the question and comment periods relating to the reappointment of the auditor, as in past years, Bryden McMaster, partner with Welsh LLP, will be available to answer questions relating to their duties as auditor, which include certain questions received in advance of the meeting. On that topic, there is no requirement under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act for CIRA or its auditors to respond to questions from members submitted before the AGM. As Jill noted, today's meeting also includes 3 member proposals. Under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, each member may submit and discuss any matter they wish to raise at the meeting, which is called a proposal. So long as these proposals have met the statutory requirements, CIRA must include these proposals in the business of the meeting, and CIRA must give the proposing member an opportunity to discuss the proposals at the meeting. That being said, it is also important to consider any member proposal in light of proper corporate governance. Unless the Act or a corporation's articles specify otherwise, directors are responsible for managing or supervising the management of the activities and affairs of a corporation. This means that absent specified fundamental changes or specified member approvals, like the appointment of the auditors, members cannot formally engage in CIRA's operational matters. Instead, members participate in CIRA's governance and affairs by electing directors to carry out those responsibilities. CIRA's directors and officers must act honestly and in good faith with a view to the best interests of the corporation, and they must exercise the care, diligence, and skill that a reasonably prudent person would exercise in comparable circumstances. CIRA takes good corporate governance very seriously, and we're grateful to members for their continued participation in the AGM and in director elections. Okay, that's enough lawyer talk for now. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Jill.
Thanks, Bridget. As a technology professional, you and I use technical terms very differently. I'm grateful to have your experience in helping us navigate all of the terminology and proper order. As my colleagues and fellow directors know, I loathe reading off of a script, and I typically prefer a more casual style of managing meetings. But the statutory requirements of our AGM, and most corporate AGMs, require a more formal approach. So it is always a challenge for me to find the right balance. I ask for your patience while we work through all of the necessary formality for this meeting. With that, let's dive into the corporate presentations. As we reflect on the past year, it's clear that both CIRA and the internet as a whole are entering an important phase of transition. We are starting to see what this next phase of the internet might look like and how it could impact CIRA. The domain industry has reached a point of maturity, and .ca domains are returning to the low-growth environment we saw 5 years ago. As the domain industry slows, the cost of running and protecting a domain registry is higher than ever. Infrastructure is more expensive. Talent is scarce and in demand. And keeping a critical element of Canada's digital infrastructure secure requires constant vigilance. Over the last year, CIRA's cybersecurity and registry services have expanded, providing the necessary resources to safeguard the future of .ca. CIRA's registry platform now powers several top-level demands globally, such as Ireland's .ie and Singapore's .sg. CIRA's recent partnership with SIDN, the operators of the Netherlands .nl, is a major step forward to evolving an exceptional registry platform. This partnership builds off the expertise and leadership of two world-class organizations and creates the foundation to transform how we operate registries across the globe. Protecting Canadians against cybersecurity threat remains a top priority for our organization. CIRA now protects more than 7 million users across hospitals, schools, universities, and businesses as it works to keep Canadians safe online. On the global stage, CIRA is deeply engaged in shaping internet governance. Our commitment to a multi-stakeholder model, one that brings together businesses, governments, nonprofits, and individuals, is unwavering. This approach ensures that the internet remains open, accessible, and secure, governed by diverse perspectives and expertise. CIRA plays a critical role in advocating for this model, ensuring that no single entity has outsized control over the internet's future. To continue on this journey to build a trusted internet for Canadians, CIRA is currently in the process of developing its next strategic plan, which will guide the organization through to 2028. Consultations with members, the board, government stakeholders, and industry leaders are all a key part of the engagement strategy that will help craft this new direction. The board stands ready to do its part and fully supports the organization as it looks to break new ground. Members are a key part of this journey. Take advantage of the many opportunities you have to engage with CIRA, whether it be at the AGM, a Canadians Connected event, or via a survey from the organization. You are a key part of this multi-stakeholder process, and your input and enthusiasm are invaluable. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank CIRA staff and management for their efforts and dedication in this past year. In particular, I would like to express my confidence in and appreciation of the leadership provided by Byron Holland, CIRA's president and CEO. I look forward to continuing to work with this incredible team to help build a trusted internet for Canadians. With that, I will pass it on to Byron.
Thank you, Jill. And I'd like to welcome everybody who has joined us today for CIRA's annual general meeting. As you heard from Jill, CIRA believes strongly in the multi-stakeholder model, and your participation, passion, and candor are essential to our mission. I'd like to start by thanking the entire CIRA staff and the management team, as well as the board of directors, for their hard work and dedication throughout the past year. We have a saying here at CIRA, a trusted internet for Canadians. It's our purpose, it is our North Star. While perfect trust may not be fully achievable, it's an aspirational goal and a perfect example of setting your sights high. But make no mistake, the internet is suffering a crisis of trust right now, and it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to help this. CIRA plays a critical role in supporting, promoting, and protecting the internet around the world, and never has that been more important than right now. Things that were once seen as a given, an open, interoperable internet based on technical standards, are now no longer certain. The game is afoot. Not everyone shares our views, and there are moves being made by authoritarian regimes around the world to fundamentally change the nature of the internet. This has happened before, but the fact is they are more sophisticated and coordinated than ever. We cannot retreat on the values of the internet, and we must act. This is why CIRA will continue to play an active role in global internet governance. 2025 will mark 20 years since the inception of the World Summit on the Information Society, or WSIS, and the process known as WSIS Plus 20. This United Nations-led review of the process made towards a, and I quote, people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society, end quote, will be a major focus of the internet governance community and CIRA in the coming months and year. It is critical that CIRA not only participate, but lean into this process to use our influence to help protect and promote the internet that we want, one that reflects Canadian values and those of democratic nations worldwide. Of course, nothing erodes trust on the internet quite like cyber threats. A safe, open, interoperable internet cannot thrive if malware, botnets, and deep fakes are allowed to flourish and poison this incredible resource. The landscape has changed. AI has raised the stakes, and hackers are no longer just a nuisance, but a threat to our infrastructure, our data, and even democratic systems. A few years back, CIRA entered the cybersecurity space because we knew we had the expertise and infrastructure required to make a difference. As a private, not-for-profit corporation, our ethos is to do well by doing good. And the inroads that we have made in the cybersecurity industry have not only helped protect the future of .ca, but have also had a real impact on the lives of many Canadians. More than 200,000 Canadians are protected from malware and other malicious activity on the protected tier of CIRA's Canadian Shield, our free DNS firewall service for individual Canadians and their families. While that's a great start, we have plans to increase that number to 2 million over the next 3 years as we redouble our efforts to protect as many Canadians as possible. As we move forward, we will continue to build out our portfolio by adding new services to protect Canadian institutions, infrastructure, and businesses from the ever-increasing number of threats on the internet. Another way CIRA spreads its values across the internet is by helping build online communities. Several years ago, we made the decision to build our own in-house registry platform to run .ca. But we knew the days of every country around the world building their own infrastructure were coming to a close. Building and running a registry is not like it used to be. Infrastructure is more expensive than ever, talent is scarce and expensive, and domain registries are tempting targets for cyber criminals. So we decided to make our Made in Canada registry to offer it to the world. Only a few years later, countries like Ireland, New Zealand, and Singapore, among others, all run their national top-level domains on CIRA's registry platform. Building on that, nearly a year ago, we announced a milestone partnership with SIDN, the National Registry for .nl in the Netherlands. Through this partnership, CIRA and SIDN will jointly own, develop, and promote our joint registry platform to the world, which will be also running .nl, one of the largest registries in the world, by early 2026. This is a huge accomplishment for CIRA, as it validates our strategy of bringing our Canadian-made technology to the world, helps accelerate our platform's growth, and spreads our community-driven values to even more countries and other domain name extensions globally. These accomplishments, the influence that we have, and the infrastructure we run really make CIRA an indispensable piece of Canada's internet ecosystem. While we are seeing lower growth with .ca domains as the domain name industry reaches its maturity phase, we have continued to drive our mission to help build a trusted internet for Canadians by investing in internet governance, cybersecurity, and registry services. These pillars of our business protect and reinforce our core mandate of running .ca by providing us with the resources, the infrastructure, the scale and expertise required to protect and promote Canada's domain. CIRA operates at a level of magnitude and complexity that few Canadian organizations can boast. We process more than 60 billion queries a day across 26 global nodes in our network, more than 3.3 million CA domains, representing millions of small businesses, schools, organizations, and individuals rely on the 100% uptime of our services. And we're doing it for the first time ever, and this is an exclusive sneak peek for our members, as a carbon-neutral company. In short, CIRA is an organization Canadians can be proud of and one that you, the members, play an important role in. Before I wrap up, I would also like to thank the members of CIRA's board, particularly our chair, Jill Kowalchuk, for her leadership, counsel, and support that enables CIRA's success. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. With that, let's get started with our general question period dedicated to CIRA's activities. We have looked at the standard used in ICANN and other related multi-stakeholder organizations to help ensure many voices are heard while keeping our meeting timely and on task. Members are invited to raise their hand for any questions. I am joined both virtually and in the room by CIRA's executive team, who are able to respond during this general Q&A period. To allow for as many questions as possible, we ask members to limit themselves to one question and use no more than 30 seconds. We will also ask that responses be kept to under 2 minutes. I've asked Bridget to help us to keep us on time as a practice of sorts prior to the official business portion of the AGM. As I call on each member, I would ask that you repeat your name and where you are joining from. I apologize if I pronounce your name wrong. Pronunciation of names isn't my strong suit at the best of times, and it can be nerve-wracking managing all aspects of the AGM. With that, first up is Charles Maurer. Charles, you can unmute and go ahead.
Hi. What are the financial arrangements broadly outlined with the deal with the Netherlands? Are they buying into this product? Are they taking over the product? The devil's in the details, so perhaps you could go into them a bit.
Thanks. Byron?
Sure, thanks for the question. The arrangement is that SIDN, the Dutch top-level domain, is buying into a partnership with CIRA so that we can continue to jointly develop the platform over time. A registry platform is not a one-and-done development project. We are constantly iterating and upgrading and ensuring the safety of the registry platform itself. So it's a continual development exercise, and SIDN will be buying into the platform, and then we will continue to develop and operate it as a partnership over time.
Thanks, Byron. Next up, we have Carrie Brown. Carrie, go ahead.
I wonder if you could expand a little bit on the carbon neutral. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Byron, did you want to take it, or feel free to bring up Jane if you'd like some support?
Sure. Jane, come on up. Jane is our Chief Operating Officer and is leading that particular project. Jane.
Thank you for the question. Yes, it's a kind of a sneak release that we are carbon neutral for fiscal 24. And I do have to keep the actual project a little bit under wraps because that's going to come out in this fiscal 25 period. And we also have targets for fiscal 24 and ongoing. So our targets are 40% reductions in scopes 1 and 2 by 2030. So over time, you'll be seeing our plans and our reduction actuals as we maintain those targets going forward. But the actual project, you'll have to wait and see. It's coming soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So I'm looking forward to hearing more, and I'm sure other members are as well. So as I stated in the rules, we're going to hear from as many members as possible. So I'll go through the people who haven't asked questions, and then if there's time, I'll let others ask second questions or follow up. So next up in the queue is David McKee. David. You'll need to unmute on your end. I'll ask Lumi to send a request and give one more second for David. If not, I'll go to the next in the queue and then we'll come back. Oh, I see you're unmuted now, David. We can't hear you. Do you want to make sure the right microphone is selected? Okay, you can keep your hand up, David. I'm going to go to next in the queue, and then we'll come back to you after the next question is done, and hopefully we can get your microphone working. Next up, we have Joseph Murray. Joseph, go ahead. You're unmuted, Joseph, but I can't hear you on my end. Could we maybe check if your right microphone is selected? In the bottom next to the mute button, you should be able to see which microphones you have, and sometimes that resolves the issue. Okay. I'll go back. Same thing, Joseph, you can keep your hand up and I'll come back to you and see. David, were you able to get your microphone working? You want to unmute and give it a try?
Testing 1, 2, 3. How's this?
Yes, we can hear you. A little quiet, but I've got some audio. Go ahead.
Okay, yay. Thank you very much. The question is to you, Jill. And I was very happy that you mentioned the multi-stakeholder model. And actually, Byron had also mentioned online community. So the question I have is, as I look at what you said, Jill, with the member experience of the interact at the AGM and in-person events and member surveys, how are you happy with the way that works? Is there any room for improvement for the multi-stakeholder model and online community?
Thanks, David. So great question. A little quiet, so I'm just going to reiterate in my 2 minutes. So I think you were asking about our multi-stakeholder model and our engagement specifically with one of those groups, members, how it works, and is there an opportunity for improvement? So my philosophy is there's always opportunity for improvement and evolution of how we do things. So I think that when you look to respond in the survey related to the AGM and other surveys we have, certainly looking for your input and feedback. We've explored a number of things over the course of since I've been on the board related to forums or other forums or the like, and work towards balancing, making an environment both where people can participate, but that's also something that's safe and inclusive and allows for a broad range of voices. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to attend one of the Canadians Connected events. I've been able to attend a couple of them, and it's a really great way to interact not only with CIRA, but also with other CIRA members in terms of understanding what we're doing and getting to know people out there in the community. That being said, always looking for thoughts and suggestions. And so please, in the AGM survey, find one of the text boxes. And if you have any suggestions for how we can improve, I'm really eager to hear it. With that, I'll go to the next question in the queue. Joseph Murray, you're the next up.
Hopefully, can you hear me this time?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Thanks, Joseph. Go ahead.
I switched mics. So I'm a small business owner, and I really appreciate some of the security products that services that have been made available to both individuals and small businesses. And I was wondering if there are any plans to do more in that area in the coming year.
Great question. Byron, I'll pass it to you, and you can bring up members of the team as you wish.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Joseph. The short answer is yes, but I'm going to ask John Ferguson, our VP, to address it.
Thanks again for the question. So we're certainly excited whenever we hear from members and partners and customers on what they enjoy about what we're doing. The products that we have in store all have set roadmaps for this fiscal year and beyond. So you're going to see more of a lot of what we're doing today, going deeper, going wider, trying to serve more verticals in the community better. There are some new initiatives that are coming up in the new strat plan. So as a lot of members may be aware, we go through reviews annually of what comes next within our portfolio. The new strategic plan does have a set of new extensions to our cybersecurity offering, and I think you'll find a lot of great things there. The team also is working a lot in conjunction with the small business associations, professional organizations. So if you're a member of any large community or practices, if you will, they may also have arrangements with us for additional services, preferential pricing. So we're doing our best to get our support into the community as far as we can.
Thanks, John. Next up, we have Peter Temesk. Peter? I can see you've unmuted, but we're not yet able to hear you. Might need you to select a different microphone. Still can't hear you. I'll give it 10 more seconds. If not, you can keep your hand up. I'll go to the next person, and then maybe we can come back. It did resolve the last issue, so. Okay, I'm going to move to next in the queue, and I will come back to you. Next up, we have William Stratus. William?
PM or a town hall meeting, because I don't recall that there was an announcement of attendance and confirmation where the quorum was achieved.
Yep. You broke up at the first part, but I think I heard you. Right now, we're in the pre-AGM portion of our, the pre-portion of our AGM. We have not yet started the formal portion. That will be directly following this Q&A, and we will announce quorum and move into that. So typically, or at least the way we've chose to do it, which aligns with how most corporations do it, this is the corporate presentation and general Q&A is outside of the formal AGM portion of our business.
Okay, that wasn't really made clear earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, I have Peter. Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Thanks. Go ahead, Peter.
I have the pleasure of attending a few AGMs in person in the past. I've been a .ca member for a long time. I have multiple websites. These are for hobbies or blogging and personal interests. I'm not a business person. I'm an employee, happen to be in the federal government as an employee in Ottawa. So I've been able to attend a number of the AGMs as well as traveling to Montreal one time. I'm a little, I'm just wondering, I run out of time, sorry. I'm wondering about cybersecurity and when is that really necessary for our business, and how much is it a secondary business or is it a key part of our business? Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll work better at the timing aspect of it. On the cybersecurity piece, I will pass to Byron, who can kick us off and then bring in others as needed. Byron.
Hi, thanks for the question. Yeah, a number of years ago, CIRA, with its board, decided to diversify some of our services and leverage both the infrastructure and the expertise that we have in-house. And really the focus was around DNS-oriented services. So whether it was DNS Anycast, which if you've been to a number of AGMs, you've certainly heard me talk about over the years, and then DNS Firewall, which is specifically a cybersecurity-oriented service. And really what we're doing is trying to live up to the fundamental goal of this organization, right, which is a safe, stable, and secure internet, in addition to doing our part to create a trusted internet. And that's where, while diversifying services, we believe we can have the best effect in deploying some additional cybersecurity services where we already have the infrastructure and the in-house expertise. So that's how we get to the cybersecurity space in terms of leveraging what we already have. And it's, we've been in market with some of these services for a handful of years, and we continue to build out additional services that leverage our expertise and what we see as the needs of the various Canadian communities. Thanks.
Thanks, Byron. I'm eager to try and squeeze in at least one, hopefully two more questions before we need to move on. Next up is Chris McCauley. Chris? I see you've unmuted, but we can't hear you. Did you want to try selecting another microphone? Okay, you can keep your hand up, Chris. We'll go to the next person in the queue, and then I will come back to you. I'll add a couple minutes on to account for our few technical issues as we go through. Next in the queue is Konstantinos Sembelis. Go ahead. We're getting a lot of feedback. I'm getting audio, but I'm getting a lot of feedback. Did you want to see if the right microphone is selected and then give us another try? You're unmuted, so I'll get you to, or you're muted. There, go ahead. Now we're not hearing you at all. Unfortunately, when you did unmute and we could hear you, we just got a lot of, it didn't come through in a way that we could hear you. So I'm going to try Chris one more time, and then we'll see if we can get these last two questions answered. Chris McCauley, go ahead.
Hey, how are you?
Great, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody. I am just wondering, and maybe you'll cover this later on in the meeting, just some changes or CIRA is ever changing. So is the CRTC. How is that partnership working? And how are things moving with that? Maybe some updates on how those things are.
No, we definitely covered that one now. Byron, I'll pass it over to you, and you can call on others as needed. Byron.
In terms of the CRTC, we don't have per se a formal partnership with them. However, we do certainly work with them in different ways. Usually it's providing what we would consider expert feedback into some of their processes, if you will, but really only where we have something that we believe is of incremental value, where we possess a particular expertise. So we certainly have a good and ongoing relationship with them. We've also provided our internet performance test services to them. So that's where we measure not only speed, but about 100 different engineering data points in terms of people's individual internet connections, which helps the CRTC understand the connectivity landscape in Canada better. They use a number of different services, but one of them is ours. Thanks.
Thanks, Byron. We will given our technical audio issues, I will give the final individual in the queue one more time with the audio. before we move on. So Konstantinos, did you want to unmute and try one more time?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I'm getting audio, but it's a bit garbled. Okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to understand that to be able to provide an answer. But what I would request, if you want to send us an email into that, we will work to see if we can get an answer. And you can email us at member.services@cira.ca, and we will do our best, if appropriate, to get that answer. Okay, thank you for everyone's engagement and that great set of questions. That concludes the general question period. We have one last piece of housekeeping before we proceed with the AGM. We'd like to take this opportunity to ensure that you know how to vote before the official business begins. I'll ask Lumi operators to post our test question asking you, how many CIRA AGMs have you attended? Please vote now. A team member will keep time for 1 minute to ensure members have time to register their vote. While we are waiting for the votes to be registered, I'm going to ask the next set of presenters to join me on stage.
The results are in. 57 members are joining us for the first time. 32 members have joined us twice, and 96 members have joined us for 3 or more times. Welcome.
Thanks, Bridget. It looks like we have lots of long-standing members as well as a few new faces in the crowd. We welcome and thank you all. Now, as I mentioned before, as we move into the formal AGM portion of the meeting, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce you to my board colleagues. While you will all be listening to me for the majority of today's proceedings, I'm joined by a diverse and incredibly qualified set of individuals who make up CIRA's board. The 12 members you see on the screen bring a diverse set of skills and experience, such as domain industry, cybersecurity, financial, risk, and legal. They come from a wide range of industries, including corporate, tech startups, nonprofits, and consulting fields. We are now joined by a few new faces. Colleen Arnold, Board Director and Chair of the Finance, Audit, Investment, and Risk Management Committee. Colleen is a Chartered Professional Accountant and is a member in good standing of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Nova Scotia. Jane Fulford, CIRA's Chief Operating Officer, who is also a CPA and a member in good standing of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. Bryden McMaster, who is joining us virtually as he has in past AGMs. Bryden is a partner at Welsh LLP, CIRA's auditor. Bryden is also a CPA and a member in good standing of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. Under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, any member may request that the auditor attend the AGM and answer questions relating to their duties. If you have any questions about how you can participate during the AGM, instructions and links to the materials, like our AGM guide, are available in the Home tab. With that, we will move into the formal AGM portion of the meeting. My goal is to try and keep the corporate-driven agenda items, financials, and appointment of auditors to 30 to 45 minutes, depending on questions. We will now proceed with the CIRA 2024 Annual General Meeting. I now call to order the Annual General Meeting. In accordance with our bylaws, Bridget LeBlanc-Lapointe will act as Secretary, and I will act as chair. Bridget, how many members are present?
A quorum of 100 members is needed, and there are 233 members present.
With that, I declare the meeting duly constituted, and we will now proceed with the business at hand. The notice of the meeting was posted on CIRA's AGM website on August 22nd, 2024. I propose to dispense with the reading of the notice, and I direct that a copy of the notice be kept with the secretary with records of this meeting. Unless there are any objections in the next 30 seconds, we will proceed with the agenda as distributed. We will now proceed with the tabling of the 2023 AGM minutes. A copy of the minutes of the 2023 Annual General Meeting was made available to all members through CIRA's AGM website on August 22nd, 2024. Prior to the meeting, CIRA and its auditor received 40 questions related to the financial statements from a single member. Questions numbered 1, 3, and 11 relate to the duties of the auditor and will be answered by Bryden McMaster from Welch LLP during the motion relating to the reappointment of the auditors. Following the presentation of the highlights of the financial statements, we will open the floor for general questions on the financial statements. The question period will be handled in accordance with the 2024 AGM guide to ensure as many members as possible can participate. I'd now like to introduce Colleen Arnold, Chair of CIRA's Finance, Audit, and Investment and Risk Management Committee, who will present the highlights of the auditor's report and the financial statements for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2024.
Good afternoon. My name is Colleen Arnold. As Jill shared, I am Chair of CIRA's Finance, Audit, and Risk Management Committee, which I will refer to as the FAIR Committee. The FAIR Committee assists the board in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities for CIRA's financial reporting, audit, investment, and risk management processes. This committee supports the board in ensuring that CIRA's budgets and financial activities are aligned with the organization's objectives, that risks are identified and managed, and that the organization has the financial resources to achieve its goals. As part of our mandate, the FAIR Committee reviews the financial performance of CIRA on a quarterly basis. We also review CIRA's proposed annual audit plan, the performance and services provided by the external auditor, the resulting audited financial statements, the independent auditor's report, and the audit findings report and management letter, if any. I am here today to share the results of the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2024, which I will refer to as FY24. Following the appointment of the auditors by the members, the auditors work with CIRA management to prepare the annual audit plan for review and approval by the FAIR Committee. The financial statements have been prepared by management in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. The auditor presented the FY24 draft financial statements to the FAIR Committee with inclusion of the independent auditor's report and the management letter. The FAIR Committee recommended approval to the board, which was followed by board approval. A full copy of the annual audited financial statements and the independent auditor's report can be found on our website as part of the annual report to members. Our external auditors at Welch LLP are of the opinion that our financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, CIRA's financial position, operational results, and changes in net assets and cash flows. Welch's audit was completed in accordance with accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. I'm pleased to report that a clean audit opinion was received from the auditors. To keep my presentation brief, I'll speak to some key financial and operational aspects of CIRA's business, and I encourage you to review the complete documents online. I will provide just a few highlights from CIRA's past fiscal year. First, CIRA remains in a strong financial position. We have a healthy statement of financial position with $53.7 million in total assets, of which $41 million is held within our restricted investment portfolio and $14.3 million in net assets. CIRA achieved an overall increase in revenue of 7.2%, or $2.8 million over the previous year, with $32.4 million in .ca revenues. Our core .ca domain business experienced growth of 0.9% in .ca domains under management in FY24. This reflects overall industry trends and is consistent with the growth rates of the top 30 country code top-level domains. In FY24, .ca domain growth returned closer to pre-2020 levels. FY24 ended with 3.4 million .ca domains under management, an absolute increase of 30,833 domains over the closing balance of the prior year. Our strategy to invest and diversify services continues to gain further traction in FY24. Our cyber DNS and registry services grew 27% over the previous year from $6.3 million, and we ended the year with over $8 million in diversified services revenue. This continued growth displays CIRA's strong strategic position in Canada's security landscape. CIRA continues to establish itself as a leader in cybersecurity defense with investments in new products and services. Furthermore, the CIRA registry platform saw growth in FY24, onboarding .sg Singapore onto the platform. In the current and final year of our 5-year strategic plan, we will continue to focus on optimizing our financial goals and key performance indicators across all programs, services, and activities. I'm pleased to have offered you a high-level overview, aware that this only begins to scratch the surface. I invite you to view our full audited financial statements presented online at CIRA.ca. And of course, we are more than happy to answer any questions you might have with respect to the financial statements in our question period at the end. Thank you for your attention. I will now hand it back to our chair, Jill, for any questions related to the financial statements.
Thank you, Colleen. We will now open the floor for questions related to the financial statements. We have a total of 7 minutes for the question period. Bridget will alert us when any time limit has been reached. Do any members have any specific questions with respect to the financial statements? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue, and note that you will have 30 seconds only to ask your question. First up, I have Don Thompson. Don, go ahead.
On the website, when you sign on there, it asks for cookies, and then it tells us that you guys are in partnership with a large number of people, including Facebook and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, and you perform ads for them, but there is no ad revenue in the financials. Is there a reason for that?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Jane to answer the question. Jane, go ahead. Please feel free to call on your friends if you are not comfortable answering it.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask Spencer to come up and address this question in terms of ad revenue. I think that's what you were asking, Dawn.
Okay, hurry up, Spencer. We're going to keep on time. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I just want to clarify, CIRA does not run ads. Does not run ads for these companies. We run ads for our products and services, and as such, we have to have various pieces of code or tracking pixels on the site in order to monitor the conversion of those ads. So that's not money that we're making off ads. It's money that we're spending on ads to promote our products and services. Thanks.
Thanks, Spencer. And as you'll note, we're going to work really hard to stick to our time limit. So I appreciate that, Spencer. Thanks for that. Any other questions related to the financial statements? I have Stephen Werner in the queue. Stefan, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I think I got the unmute working.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Seeing not many other questions, what is the revenue for other services that is mentioned in the statement of operations?
Great question. Jane is pulling that up as we speak and will answer the question for us, I think.
Hi, Stefan. So you're looking at the revenue line. So the revenue is comprised of, as Colleen had actually shared, our .ca revenue, and the other revenue is actually coming from our diversified services. So that's where it's DNS as well as registry services. So when you heard us sharing that .sg Singapore was coming online with the CIRA's registry platform, implementation of SIDN, .nl onto the registry platform, those all comprise our additional services, as well as cyber awareness training, otherwise known as CAT. So when you're looking at the financial statements, you're saying that amount at approximately $8 million of our $40 million total.
Excellent. Thanks, Jane. Next up, we have Eric Fong. Eric, go ahead.
Comment on the auditor rotation and whether you are planning to change the financial statement auditors on a regular basis?
Jane?
Sure. Thank you for the question. There is actually a proposal, a motion to continue with the current reappointment. The current auditors, Welsh LLP, has been our auditors for 3 years. This would be going into the 4th. And typically, it's about a 10-year period where we would go out to RFP, a request for proposal.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Any final questions before we look to move on? Next up, I have Carol Morrison. Carol, go ahead.
I assume some of your expenses must be salaries. Are those available in the breakdown of the financial report?
Go ahead, Jane.
Thank you, Carol. The salaries and benefits is a line item in the financials. In terms of breakdown, it's a total across CIRA.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Jane. I'll go next up to let everyone ask their questions. Next up is William Stratus. William, go ahead. I think you've unmuted, William, but we're not able to hear you.
Sorry. Can we have any breakdown of insurance costs? And I'm referencing perhaps a cost in insurance related to the cyber security operations and consulting side of this business.
Jane?
Sure. Thank you, William. If I'm understanding, in terms of the breakdown of insurance, we do have multiple insurance. In terms of actual cyber coverage, that is a question that would be privileged due to exactly that, so would not be sharing those specifics.
Thanks, Jane. Next up, I have Elaine McGregor. Elaine? You'll need to unmute. There we go. We're not able to hear you. Did you want to check to make sure you have the right microphone selected? Or try a different one? We're still not able to hear you. If you want to, so what I'm going to do, if you want to keep your hand raised, I'm going to go to the next person in the queue, and then we'll come back to you and try again. Carol Morrison, did you have a second question?
No, I thought I'd lowered my hand.
Oh, no problem. Happens all the time. Thanks. All right. Elaine, did you want to try again?
Can you hear me?
We can now. Yep, go ahead.
So I was looking at your statement of operations, and it does seem that the CIRA in general is going fairly close to the line, and that if you have to only use investment income to make sure that you don't lose money every year, I'm wondering if there's any possibility this will continue over subsequent years, or how you're planning to make more money so that you don't. It doesn't look like you're running that close to the line.
Thanks. I'll pass it over to Jane.
Thank you. The actual planned deficit in fiscal year 24 was planned in terms of permitting us to continue on with the strategic directions of fiscal 21 to 25. So it was a planned deficit approved by the Fair Committee and subsequently by the board to make these investments. And I think we heard Byron and Jill both talk about our diversified services in the space of slowing growth for .ca. So we've been specifically investing in these areas. And in terms of our coverage, we do have net assets in excess of 14 million. That is in the range of the net asset policy between 4 to 8 months. So it's part of our strategy moving forward in terms of investments.
Thanks so much, Jane. So as we have no more questions for this matter, I declare that the financial statements and the auditor's report thereon have been presented and received. We will now be presenting a motion for the reappointment of CIRA's auditor. Welch LLP has agreed to serve as CIRA's auditor until the next annual general meeting. I will now invite Bryden McMaster from Welch LLP to respond to questions received from a member in advance of the meeting. I flag that when a member duly makes the request, the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act requires the auditors to be present to answer questions related to their duties. Bryden, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. Go ahead, Bryden.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. As noted by the chair, we did receive a number of questions from one member in advance of today's AGM. As a licensed public accounting firm, Welch LLP follows Canadian auditing standards, which are developed by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. Our auditing standards provide specific guidance on requirements as it relates to communicating audit-related matters to the organization and requires those communications to be made with those charged with governance of the organization. As was outlined a bit earlier by Bridget before the meeting, in the case of CIRA, the Board of Directors has delegated this responsibility to the Finance, Audit, Investment, and Risk, or FAIR Committee. This delegation to a subcommittee by the board is consistent with other organizations of CIRA's size and established through CIRA's board charter. The FAIR Committee meets at least twice annually with our firm and discusses all of the matters related to the audit in detail. We are also required by our CPA Code of Professional Conduct to maintain independence, objectivity, and confidentiality. As such, while we're able to answer specific questions related to our duties as auditor, It's not our role, and it would very much be not appropriate for us to be disclosing or discussing all of the financial affairs of the organization. Based on the questions received in advance of the AGM that relate to our duties, I'm happy to address the following. As the chair mentioned, my name is Bryden McMaster. I am a licensed public accountant and the audit partner responsible for the audit of CIRA's annual audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2024. I'm happy to join all of you on today's call, as I have done since we were first appointed as auditors 3 years ago through an independent proposal RFP process. We also are a licensed public accounting firm that is in good standing with the province of Ontario, and we are registered with CPAO. Our firm's primary role since being appointed as auditor has been to conduct CIRA's annual financial statement audit and assist in the related not-for-profit tax filings. Consistent with many other mid-sized and large accounting firms, we also provide occasional guidance to management on specific trends or topics where we're permitted to do so by our professional regulations. Since being appointed auditor, only one such engagement was undertaken, and it was a small engagement conducted by an advisory partner of our firm related to accounting matters. Consistent with Canadian auditing standards, and as mentioned earlier, I can also confirm that we do communicate to those charged with governance, which is CIRA's FAIR Committee, as part of the audit process. These communications occur before each year-end fieldwork exercise, which is part of establishing our overall audit and approach and audit plan, as was mentioned by the FAIR Committee chair earlier, as well as at the culmination of the audit process, where we disseminate the audit results and any other matters required to be communicated to those charged with governance. I'd also note we remain available throughout the year for both CIRA's management and those charged with governance, and would answer questions from the board or the FAIR Committee should the need arise for additional communications throughout the year. Our specific responsibilities as part of conducting the audit are outlined in the auditor's responsibility section for the audit of the financial statements. So it can be seen for everyone to read on page 2 of CIRA's audited financial statements. This independent auditor's opinion, which is a clean opinion and is consistent with those issued for any other not-for-profit organization in Canada. As outlined in that section, we do have a responsibility to obtain an understanding of the internal controls relevant to the audit in order to design sufficient and appropriate audit procedures for our fieldwork. We also correspond and meet with both the FAIR Committee, as mentioned, and CIRA's legal counsel to determine if there's any other key risk areas that we need to focus our audit in order to be able to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements prepared by management are free from material misstatement. Based on the procedures we performed, we did not identify any matters that could constitute a reportable deficiency. I'll now turn it back over to the chair, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bryden. Before I invite questions or discussion, could I please have a member move the motion to reappoint Welsh LLP as CIRA's auditor by clicking the raise hand button?
Mark Kant is recorded as having moved the motion to reappoint Welsh LLP as CIRA's auditor.
Thank you. Will a member please second the motion?
Kevin Bloomberg is recorded as having seconded the motion.
We will now open the floor to questions related to the motion to appoint the auditors. I'll ask everybody who doesn't have a question to lower your hand. If you have a question, please raise hand button to get in the queue. You will have 30 seconds to ask your question. We have a total of 7 minutes for the question period. Bridget will alert us when any time limit has been reached. Victoria Withers, you have a question. The floor is yours. You will need to unmute. You have lowered your hand, so I'm going to go to next in the queue. If you did have a question, please feel free to put your hand back up and we'll get you back in the queue. Carrie Brown, you're next in the queue. Go ahead. We'll need you to unmute, Carrie. Okay, I've noted you have also lowered your hand. If you did have a question, please raise it and we'll get you back in the queue. One more I have in the queue, Joseph Murray. you can go ahead. You'll need to unmute.
I had my hand up earlier to try and second the motion. I'm fine.
No problem. Seeing as there are no questions, we will now proceed with comments from members. If you have a comment, please click the raise hand button to get in the queue. You will have 1 minute to speak, and we will have a total of 7 minutes for the comment period. Bridget will alert us when any time has been reached. Rahi Tajdanda, you have a comment? Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much. The comment is quick and easy. I think it would be a good idea for CIRA to start looking at opportunities to collaborate with professional organizations like CPA, CMC, PMI here in Canada to create awareness and to potentially do collaborative education as well.
Thanks for the comment. Doesn't relate to the motion at hand, but it was a great comment. Okay. Seeing as there are no comments, we will now proceed to voting on the motion as set out on the screen. The motion reads, be it resolved that Welsh LLP be reappointed as CIRA's auditor to hold office until the close of the next annual general meeting or until their successors are duly appointed, and that the Board of Directors be authorized to establish the remuneration of the auditor. You will see the motion appear on your screen. Simply click on your selection. Your vote will be automatically registered. Please vote now.
The motion received 159 votes in favor, 9 votes against, and 5 abstentions.
The motion is carried. Welch LLP will serve as CIRA's auditors until the next annual general meeting. That concludes the regular business of the meeting. I would like to thank Colleen and Jane and invite them to take their leave of stage as we move to the next part of the meeting. Member Alex Barasco of Ottawa, Ontario, has submitted 3 member proposals for consideration at this year's annual general meeting. CIRA's AGM website includes all 3 member proposals. You can go. The supporting statements from the member proposals and CIRA's response. To ensure I remain focused on conducting an orderly meeting, I've asked Ann Butler, a fellow director, to provide the CIRA response to the member motions. The proposing member initiated a legal proceeding against CIRA in 2020, which still continues today. This year's member proposals relate to issues directly relevant to his litigation against CIRA. CIRA maintains that this legal proceeding is without merit, and we are vigorously defending it. The CIRA Board of Directors has prepared a written response to the member proposals, which is available on the AGM website. We would also note that CIRA already engages in almost all of the practices included in this year's member proposals. We do not support these member proposals and recommend that members vote against each of the proposals. I will now address the process for each of the member proposals. Each of the proposals will be addressed separately. Prior to the discussion of each motion, the proposing member will have 2 minutes to present his rationale to members. My fellow director, Ann Butler, will then have 2 minutes to provide the board's position on the motion. Then I will ask for a member to second the motion. The proposing member will be recorded as having moved his own motions. If a member does not second the motion in 30 seconds, we will move on to the next item in the agenda. I will then open the floor to questions from members. Please indicate if your question is directed at the proposing member, at CIRA, or both. The proposing member will be available to respond live. As in prior portions of the meeting, questions are limited to 30 seconds, and responses are limited to 2 minutes. We will then move to comments. Please keep comments short and concise. They will be limited to 1 minute. A total of 7 minutes is allocated for each question and comment period. The proposing member will then have 1 minute to provide a final comment. We will repeat this process for each of the 3 member proposals. As prepared by the proposing member, member proposal number 1 appears on your screen and was provided to members in advance of the meeting. Accordingly, I will dispense with the reading of member proposal number 1. Mr. Barasco, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first point I should make to all members, as this is the AGM, is that I have tried to get into the meeting at 3 different times, and I've taken snaps of the meeting, and this is the first time I have been allowed to speak. I was informed on Monday through a lawyer's letter that I had 2 minutes to make the advance my proposal. So here I go. As a CEO of Canada's most awarded consulting company and as a certified management consultant of 25 years and a board member on a dozen boards, I do speak truth to power, even when that is not welcome and even when I have a cold, as I do now. CIRA was established for a public service to manage a Canadian property and certainly not for profit for a select few. The CEO, hired back in 2008, believes it to be a commercial organization and treats it as such. He would like to be the CEO of an IT company, get shares, and make even more. So how does he stay in power despite the newspaper reports of questionable conduct, as only the board can fire him? You can guess. It starts with the board. He sits on all board meetings, even though the duty of the board is to manage.
Mr. Barasco, this question
Yes.
this comment is not relevant to the business at hand. As the chair of the
thank
meeting,
you.
I'm responsible for preserving and maintaining order and doing all things necessary for the proper conduct of the meeting. Your comments are out of order. I respectfully ask you to clearly and concisely state your comments related to the motion at hand without any personal attacks. I will also note you have a history of making impertinent comments about former staff, and you continue to do so. This is unacceptable. I will ask you to state your comments related to the motion of hand while respecting the rules of conduct of the meeting. If your behavior continues to seriously interfere with the business of the meeting, there will be consequences up to and including your ejection of the meeting. You have 34 seconds remaining. Please go ahead.
Lord, give me strength. So it starts with, how do you get the board? And you select the board, and the nomination process is totally at fault with people putting their thumb on the scale. The nomination committee needs to be revised. The returning officer is not independent. And I had actually sent him a long explanation showing where the returning officer process is wrong. So I can't get in to speak, and I can get overruled.
The member has exceeded the
it's
allotted
not-
time for his statement.
I believe you've had ample opportunity to make your position known. I will now ask Ann Butler to provide CIRA's response. Ann, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
The proposal suggests that CIRA's nomination and election process must be overhauled. In fact, CIRA's current nomination and election process already adheres to the principles proposed by the member as set out in the board's response on CIRA's website. The nomination committee is independent of CIRA management and the board. There are no members of CIRA management or members of the board on the nomination committee. Candidates selected by the nomination committee must have corporate and organizational governance experience, provide necessary professional expertise, and be consistent with the diverse makeup of Canadian population, as required by CIRA's policy on nominations and elections. The independent returning officer carefully reviews the election and all preceding steps and reports to the board free from influence from CIRA, the board, management, and directors. This review is rigorous and not merely perfunctory, and documents the number of ballots cast, the number of votes received by each candidate, any issues raised, and any recommendations for improvement. This is all reflected in the returning officer's report, which is published every year on CIRA's website. The proposing member's statement relating to this proposal contains inaccuracies and unfounded allegations. For example, the proposing member alleges that the nomination process is open to manipulation, but has provided no concrete examples of how and why this is the case. For all these reasons, we recommend that members vote against this motion.
Thank you. Mr. Barasco is deemed to have moved the motion. Will a member please second the motion?
Don Thompson is recorded as having seconded the motion.
We will now open the floor for questions related to member proposal number 1. Do any members have specific questions related to member proposal number 1? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to ask your question, and note that you will have 30 seconds. Please specify whether your question is directed to the proposing member or to CIRA. You will have a total of 7 minutes for the question period. Bridget will alert us when your time limit has been reached. William Stratus, you have a question. Go ahead. You're unmuted, but I cannot hear you. Can you check that you have the right? There you go.
Yeah, I'll be frank. I didn't note that you had made any outreach to the owners other than the contents of the AGM package. Have you run for the board before? Have you made attempts by alternate means to get your proposals in front of the membership?
Thank you. Mr. Barasco, you have 2 minutes for your response.
I'm sorry, I don't follow the question at all. What I think is important to note is, do members see what...
Mr. Barasco, this isn't an opportunity for you to make statements. The question was related to whether or not you have attempted to run for the board before. Can you please answer the question at hand?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I wasn't aware that I was in a grade 2 classroom. I guess
we're in an annual general meeting for which there is a set of rules set out in Nathan and Goldberg's, for which I am attempting to follow.
Yeah, I've talked to Mr. Goldberg directly, and I understand the rules and how to run a meeting far better than seen. But let me park that.
Thank you for your opinion. Would you like to answer the question at hand?
Well, if I'm given a chance, and we see a democratic process unfold without juvenile rolling of the eyes, it would be welcome. And I'm not sure whether the member is saying, have I run for the board before? Yes, I ran for the board, was elected, and served for 3 years.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Are there any further questions? Radcliffe Rock, go ahead. You'll need to unmute, and then you can ask your question.
Unmute. Lower my hand. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I've received several emails from Mr. our member. And as a man who deals with ethics, I have a simple statement, which is basically Hitchens' razor. If you have been on the board for 3 years or in the past for 3 years, why is it so difficult for you to let go of the power?
Mr. Barasco, you have 2 minutes to respond.
I'm not sure, again, that I understand the question. Letting go of the power of what? Could you elaborate on the question? Because I'm exercising my rights under law, dutifully, understanding that an AGM has a democratic process and not a totalitarian process or autocratic where people are just ruled out. a process where members can raise their hand and be acknowledged, and I haven't been acknowledged. So I'm not sure what that is, what power that you refer to, sir.
Thanks. Next question, I have Carrie Brown in the queue. Carrie, go ahead.
I have a question or a statement about Section A. All members of the nomination committee must be CIRA members. I believe that the nomination committee should be independent. That would not make it as independent as it should be. Questions for Mr. Barasco.
Mr. Barasco, you have
Hi,
2
Carrie.
minutes.
Yeah, hi, Carrie. So the point being that of 14,000 members, do you really get, is there enough to draw independence or not? And the real issue is that do non-members, if you haven't been a member of CIRA, do you really know what CIRA is about, or are you going to drink the Kool-Aid? Because it takes a long time. You should be involved. MEC had an interesting idea about membership and in fact turned around and suggested that if you're going to run for the board or be on a nomination committee, you must have voted at least once. In other words, people who sit on nominating board members and the like should have some affiliation to CIRA and not be drawn in from, I'm going to be silly here, beer halls or anywhere else. They should know CIRA, its mandate, its vision. Otherwise, they're selecting people without any knowledge of CIRA. They should be members. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks. Next in the queue is Peter Timusk. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just wondered, and this is a question for the board or the organization, have there been other lawsuits regarding the nomination process or other lawsuits from disgruntled members? Have there been any disputed elections of, I followed, to some extent all the nomination processes, which I did, which is more than 3 or 4. Is there any, thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Albert Chang, CIRA's corporate counsel, to answer. Albert?
Thank you for the question. I can confirm that there have been no other lawsuits related to our election. Mr. Barascow's lawsuit is the only one. I would also note that this lawsuit is still ongoing. It's been going for 4 years. It arose out of Mr. Barascow's disqualification in our 2019 election. I would also note that as part of this lawsuit, Mr. Barascow is asking the court to appoint him to the board, usurping our democratic process. In terms of the litigation, Mr. Barascow has had to change lawyers throughout this period. I would also note that Mr. Barascow currently owes CIRA $10,000 in costs. He tried to do something that we felt the court was not permitted in the court rules, and we brought a motion to object to it. The court agreed and ordered Mr. Barascow to pay CIRA $10,000 in costs, and I would note that this amount still remains outstanding.
Madam Chair, we have reached our time limit for the question period.
Thank you. We will now proceed with any comments from members. Do any members have any specific comments related to member proposal number 1? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to provide your comment, and note that you will have 1 minute. We have a total of 7 minutes for the comment period. Bridget will alert us when any time has been reached. Rahi Tajda, your hand has now gone down. So next in the queue is Joseph Murray. Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, it must be uncomfortable going through all of this. I've been on 10 different nonprofit boards, and I just want to say the way in which this meeting is being conducted is very formally correct, and I'd like to praise CIRA and the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we have Adam Thompson. Adam, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
comment on regarding motion 1 that this should not be one motion. If this were in the legislature, we'd refer to this as stuffing the bill. This should be 7 motions, not 1. There are things I agree with in here. There are things I disagree with in here. Doing it all as one motion makes it impossible for me to accurately reflect what I think CIRA should be doing.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments in the queue? There are no more comments. I'll have one final one. Carol Morrison, go ahead.
I agree with the last speaker. I've been desperately trying to look through this lot. And I'm completely new to the organization. And yes, it would be nice to be able to vote on this point by point.
Thank you, Carol. There are no more comments. Mr. Brasco, do you have a final comment on proposal number 1 for 1 minute?
Yes, I do. The significant point that I think people are missing, and I appreciate the comment that this could have been broken down in 7, and then we would have had Mr. Chang turn around and make all sorts of noises about too many proposals and taking up time. So it's trying to be concise. The point is that the returning officer is not independent at all. He has a general email address that anybody can hack into, especially at CIRA. He reports through the CEO all the way through. And the point of getting nomination committee to be totally independent, they should be reporting to members because they are trying to select board members, and what in fact they are doing is deselecting, picking who they deem to be favorites and ruling out members who are well qualified, and that is wrong. Thank you.
We will now proceed to voting on the motion as set out on the screen. Simply click on your selection. Your vote will automatically be registered. Please vote now.
The motion received 19 votes in favor, 130 votes against, and 28 abstentions.
The motion is not carried. As prepared by the proposing motion, by the proposing member, member proposal number 2 appears on your screen and was provided to members in advance of the meeting. Accordingly, I will dispense with reading member proposal number 2. Mr. Brasco, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thanks for the notice. The important point is that in any democracy, it is of paramount importance to maintain an accurate polling list of those eligible to vote and equally of those who have voted. It's also critical at law as well as civil society. 30% of members claimed issues around election time, which is now. How can that be? CIRA must maintain a register of members. Membership is free. I found in my survey that is published that only 52% of emails are deliverable and valid. Something untoward is happening, and I'm not sure what it is. CIRA used to have a registrant information validation process called RIV, but it hasn't been done enough, or if ever. CIRA also inhibits access to that register by charging exorbitant prices for a copy to get an extract. They are obliged in law to provide it at a reasonable price. By giving them money away, they are confirming that the cost of $500 has nothing to do with recovering costs. 80% of members thought the cost is too high, and 28% said it should be free. It is a blatant attempt to shut access and shut down any attempt by members contrary to law. CIRA also suggests that any membership communication is spam. Such communication, when done concerning affairs of the corporation, is not spam according to Castle, even though some members see it as such. Everybody at CIRA tries to stifle and muzzle communications. They don't want members to rise up and throw at the board as they happened in the UK.
Director Ann Butler, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jill. This proposal suggests various practices pertaining to the management of the Register of Members and the conduct of CIRA's elections. Again, this ignores the fact that these practices are currently implemented by CIRA as set out in the board's response, which you can find on CIRA's website. CIRA regularly asks members to update their contact information in their profile, in member newsletters, and regular communications. CIRA's website also includes the requirement for members to ensure that their contact information is current. CIRA informs each member upon joining that their information may be shared with other members. CIRA's election process and the software used to manage the election is robust and verified by the returning officer. At the start of the election, links to the election ballot are only sent to eligible members who must use their CIRA member number, username, and password to access the ballot. During the election, the returning officer carefully monitors and reports on any unusual activity before and after the election. The proposing member takes issue with the $500 fee for making a request for CIRA membership list. This fee is permissible under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act and recognizes the significant degree of time and effort spent by a CIRA staff member in preparing the membership list. All such fees are donated to the United Way. The proposing member also notes that the membership list includes 200 members with addresses outside Canada and alleges that this puts into question whether these members met the conditions of membership for being a registrant, a .ca domain name. In fact, a Canadian citizen living outside Canada would meet CIRA's Canadian presence requirements and would be eligible to register a .ca domain name. These 200 members represent approximately 1.5% of CIRA's total membership base of approximately 14,000 members. For all these reasons, we recommend you vote against this motion.
Mr. Barasko is deemed to have moved the motion. Will a member please second the motion?
Don Thompson is recorded as having seconded the motion.
We will now open the floor to questions related to member proposal number 2. Do any members have specific questions related to member proposal number 2? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to ask your question, and note that you will have 30 seconds. We have a total of 7 minutes for the question period. Bridget will alert us when any time limit has been reached. Please also specify whether your question is directed to the proposing member or to CIRA. Rahi Tajade, you have the floor.
You almost got the name. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So the question's for CIRA. It is just for clarification. Where did the $500 come from specifically? I know you said it's for their time and energy. And if it is for their time and energy, then why is it donated?
I'll ask Albert Chung to respond to the question. Albert?
Thank you for the question, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your name, but thank you for the question. First of all, CIRA, we're obligated under the Act to provide the list to any member who makes a request for the list and files the statutory declaration. It's important to remember what the list is. It's a list of the names of 14,000 members, their home addresses, and their email addresses. This is very sensitive information. It actually requires a fair bit of work for CIRA to prepare the list. Our membership team prepares the list. I review it as legal counsel. And then we have to ensure that the list is sent through secure means. In determining, the Act also allows an organization to charge a reasonable fee for preparing the list. In arriving at that fee, we spoke with other organizations, we conducted research, and we spoke with external legal counsel. So we got independent legal advice. And the advice that we got from independent legal counsel was that this is the fee that they recommend, right? So we actually got that specific advice. Now, at the end of the day, we're not there to make money as a result of the list. It's just there to reflect staff time. So we decided to do a good thing and donate that to the United Way. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Albert, and I apologize for mispronouncing both of your names. Next in the queue is Peter Fajner. Peter, go ahead.
Hi there. This question is for the gentleman proposing the motion. What does authenticating the member register quarterly entail? What kind of effort would that entail on the part of CIRA?
Mr. Barasco, you have the floor.
So I don't quite understand what it would take, because when I asked the question to CIRA, what platform does the member register maintain? And please understand, I've got about 3 decades of IT experience, including ERPs. And so I asked the question and CIRA wouldn't tell me. I guess, having been in the IT world for many years, is, first of all, the cost of maintaining it should be borne completely by CIRA. They have to do it like all the other 170,000 not-for-profit corporations. They must maintain it. The part about how long does it take to extract a list, anybody who's in the IT world, let's posit that the list is maintained already. What cost does it take to say, okay, let's take out all the names? I'm assuming that there may be other names. I don't know whether CIRA keeps birthdays or anything else like that. I don't recall any of that. But there's a lot of silliness going on. And essentially, while CIRA has a policy called the RIV process, it doesn't do it. The point to answer the question before was, it's not that CIRA asks. The point being is that they don't do it, and there's a lot of names that are frankly not deliverable, invalid, and I've come up with spoof names. 20 years ago, the most common name for registrants used to be Mickey Mouse. I didn't come across any Mickey Mouse names, but there is still a lot of silliness, and I've reported it to the returning officer, but he hasn't acknowledged my email, so I don't know whether he still has to get it through the CEO for approval or not. Thank you.
Next question, Chris Taylor.
Hello. My question is for CIRA, and I just wonder if there's any requirement when the request is made for contact information that they follow anti-spam legislation. I have requested multiple times that the proposer not send me any more emails, and he continues to do so.
Thanks. I'll ask Albert Chang, Corporate Counsel, to answer. Albert?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question because when I send the membership list to requester, including Mr. Barasco, I specify specifically that they have to adhere to all Canadian legislation, including CASL. I also strongly encourage all requesters to only contact people that they know, which Mr. Barasco has ignored every single time. He has sent over a dozen mass emails to all members, all without their consent. In addition, all his emails do not include an unsubscribe feature. He asks you to personally email him if you want to unsubscribe. And I've received a complaint from a member who asked to be unsubscribed, and his response was, "I see that you've drank the Kool-Aid." That was his response. In addition, Mr. Braskow is also in violation of the terms of use of the email platforms that he has used. He has used such email platforms as Constant Contact, Email Octopus, MailChimp, which require explicit consent from the recipients in order to receive these emails. He has sent these emails, and his accounts has been suspended each time. And what he does is each time his account is suspended, he just moves over to another account. It's like playing whack-a-mole. So to answer your question, we specifically advise requesters to respect CASL, to respect the privacy of our members, and to not mass email members when they have not consented to receiving those messages, which Mr. Braskow completely ignores. Thank you for the question.
We will take one final question. Daniel Dickinson, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. This question is for the proposing member. On the election website, he states that he attempted to validate using a third-party service every member's email address. I would like to know how we can trust this third party, A, to get correct results, and B, not to sell our information to other people.
Mr. Braskow, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first point is I wanted to raise a point of personal privilege because what Albert Chang just said is an outright lie and shows total ignorance of what CASL is, and that should be corrected. And personal privilege, if you know your rules of order, Madam Chair, have precedence over anything else. I have a right to do that democratically, and that was violated by Albert Chang, and he'll hear about it. The question about how to know the validation, whether it's valid or not, I don't know. I was recommended by several firms who specialize in bulk email to use Bounceless.io as a way to validate email addresses. A year ago, I sent the information to CIRA that a lot of the addresses were in fact invalid. This year, I used them again, and again, I sent all the information to CIRA, and CIRA has been totally silent, not interested whatsoever. And I don't know, they've never challenged the results. They've never offered a counter proposal to use another service. Unless somebody stands up and says, oh, no, this is bunk, I don't have any other way of finding out whether the email addresses are correct or not. CIRA must do its job as per its policy of doing the registrant information validation, and they haven't done it. Asking is not enough. You know, anybody who's raised kids, you can ask your kids to clean up the room, but the proof is always in the pudding. Has it been done? And CIRA hasn't done it. And that begs the question, why haven't they done what they are supposed to do, what is a good business practice, and they haven't done that? Thank you.
Your point of privilege has been noted, and we will now move to the comment period. Do any members have any specific comments related to member proposal number 2? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to provide your comment, and note that you will have 1 minute. We have a total of 7 minutes for the comment period. Bridget will alert us when any time limit has been reached. David McKee, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you, Jill. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can
Good.
hear you.
My preference is to try to get along with as many people as possible and look at multiple sides. I guess I wanted to have a question, but I'll make a comment, which was brought up by CIRA's lawyer, Mr. Chan, with respect to the members list is in the Canadian not-for-profit legislation. And if there's a problem with members receiving that list, I wonder if there's a problem with the legislation. What are the values of putting that clause into the legislation? Is there a problem with the legislation? Are there gaps in the legislation as it relates to the use of digital information? I'll just make it a comment and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tyler Tresiz. Tyler, you have 1 minute. Please unmute and you can go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I believe that the fee doesn't seem like a reasonable fee. I find it also strange that CIRA says that it's for time and effort exercised by staff, but it was just revealed that it was more derived from a survey of other organizations or from legal advice. So that seems a bit strange. So the fee just doesn't seem reasonable, considering the reasons that were previously mentioned, that if the list is maintained in an electronic way, it should be easy to produce one. That's it.
Thank you. Peter Fajner, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Hi there. It sounds like the problem the proposer is describing doesn't really exist, and I think if it did exist, this proposal wouldn't effectively address it. It seems like this proposal is just going to add a lot of effort in unnecessarily authenticating the register, and is going to make it easier for people to access the member list, which has our emails and addresses on it. I think, there might be better ways to protect the list than to have a $500 barrier, but I don't think that just making the list more freely available is going to help anything. So overall, I just don't really feel this proposal solves any problems. Thanks.
Thank you. Rahi Tajeda, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Yeah, every time it's better. All right, not bad. It's a rhetorical comment, obviously. It would be nice to see, and I can't say definitively that I've read all the documentation from CIRA, but it would be nice to see how many members' contacts have been checked and what is the trend with regards to bad emails or bad contact information, because that would at least address the member making the motion and the issue at hand in general. We always expect some amount of this data to not be up to date or to have been updated, but it would be nice to see a trend. And so perhaps next year, before the AGM in our annual documents, it would be good to see that.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carol Morrison. Carol, you have the floor for 1 minute.
I'm intrigued by this because I don't even know if I am a member. I have a CA domain. Am I supposed to be registered somehow to be a CIRA member?
We are in the comment period, so I was just confirming I can answer. And so the answer is yes. Any individual that has owns a .ca domain can then go to the CIRA website and register to be a member. If you have received the email and registered for this AGM and have signed into it, we have validated that you are in fact a member and that you have a valid domain. So yes, you can. Next in the list is Radcliffe Rock. Radcliffe, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Oh, let me put my hand down real quickly here. Since this is a registry of a number of businesses that all have a .ca, my ethical question is, since the registry is already a list, and to actually get one, all you would really need to do is print screen several thousand times. My real question is, why would anyone need 14,000 names and email addresses unless they had some nefarious fishing expedition to do?
Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Adam Thompson. Adam, you have 1 minute.
One, as a private individual with my name and private information contained in this registry, I am very uncomfortable with the fact that individuals such as Mr. Baraskow can get that information for only $500. I feel that is an extraordinarily low barrier to entry to harvest the private information of 14,000 individuals. There are some good points, however. There is an asymmetry of communication, and I would fully support both CIRA and anyone trying to communicate with CIRA members using a third-party independent service to ensure that everyone has the same access to the membership without necessarily having my personal information directly. Don't know if that's possible under the law, but that would be ideal for me. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have reached our time limit for the comment period.
Mr. Barasko, do you have a final comment on proposal number 2 for 1 minute?
Yes, I do have a couple of comments. First of all, CIRA has still, with all this time, has not answered the fundamental question about how often has the RIF process been done. So, and you have to ask the question, why hasn't CIRA answered it at all? I've asked it in writing, so no answer. The second question is, CIRA also says, oh, we've spoken to a whack of other organizations, but they don't say who or where or how. So, for example, CREA has 130,000 members, and they give access to that for free to all their members. To answer the point about preventing access, if it's used for nefarious reasons, the fine is over $10,000. There are serious complications to prohibit any nefarious use. And unfortunately,
The member has exceeded the allotted time for his statement.
I believe you have had ample opportunity to make your position known, and it is in order to move to vote. We will now proceed to voting on the motion as set out on the screen. Simply click on your selection. Your vote will automatically be registered. Please vote now.
The motion received 23 votes in favor, 148 votes against, and 16 abstentions.
The motion is not carried. As prepared by the proposing member, member proposal number 3 appears on your screen and was provided to members in advance of the meeting. Accordingly, I will dispense with the reading of member proposal number 3. Mr. Baraskow, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CIRA, believing it to be a commercial corporation under the control of the board and CEO, does not see any role for members and prefers members to be silent and obedient, expecting members to applaud. Members should not be sheep to be shorn. There must be more vigilance and care taken to deal with members' concerns. Private commercial corporations, by the way, do a much better job. While CIRA states that it values member engagement, it does not, and we've seen great evidence of it at this AGM. When I sent in some routine questions to communications, I was promised a response in 2 days. None were ever provided, despite a department dedicated to communications. Private corporations, those publicly listed, have a process to deal with shareholders, allowing shareholders to vote for board directors. they disclose all executive compensation as well. Not-for-profit corporations also have a process allowing members to submit proposals to members and not board or CEO approval. CIRA hides that process and keeps it in the shade. That must change to be lawful and to promote good board governance. CIRA must answer all questions posed well in advance in an AGM, and none have been answered, by the way. Warren Buffett, for example, has meetings that last a long time, and he does that all the time. I submitted a list of questions, and CIRA couldn't even bother to say thanks or no thanks. In summary, CIRA sees itself as a private commercial corporation that doesn't have to listen to members, as they, the board, and the CEO know it all. That has to change. There has to be allowance for member cooperation, and members should know how to submit proposals for change in their corporation.
Director Ann Butler, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jill. This proposal asks that CIRA encourage member activism and proposes that personal and confidential information pertaining to the registration of domain names should be made public. CIRA members play a critical role in CIRA's governance, and CIRA fosters member participation in the following ways. CIRA members elect all directors. All qualified members may stand for election to be a director of CIRA and in the members' slate. CIRA regularly holds in-person member meetings across Canada to engage with members. And CIRA sends quarterly newsletters to all of its members, providing information on developments within the organization. The member activism, as construed by the proposing member, takes the form of member proposals at an AGM. However, this is simply one form of member participation. The proposing member proposes that all questions posed by members must be answered, especially if given well in advance of the AGM. In recent years, this proposing member has submitted numerous questions to CIRA staff prior to the AGM. CIRA has approximately 14,000 members and aims to be fair and balanced in responding to members. Many of the questions submitted by the proposing member relate to issues directly relevant to his litigation against CIRA, and he has added as evidence in his litigation some of these email communications with CIRA staff. The proposing member also proposes that CIRA must name anyone who owns more than 250 .ca domain names and must disclose annually how many .ca domain names are used and how many are inactive. CIRA does not agree with this proposal, as this information constitutes the personal and confidential information of our registrants, and because registrants are permitted to have many .ca domain names and for their domain names to be inactive. For all these reasons, we recommend that members vote against this motion.
Mr. Brasco is deemed to have moved the motion. Will a member please second the motion?
David Michaels is recorded as having seconded the motion.
We will now open the floor for questions related to member proposal number 3. Do any members have specific questions relating to this proposal? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to ask your question, and note that you will have 30 seconds. We have a total of 7 minutes for the question period. Bridget will alert us when any time limit has been reached. Please specify whether your question is directed to the proposing member or to CIRA. David Michaels, your hand is up. You have the floor.
In fact, I had some questions. I jumped the gun by raising my hand. I didn't realize that was triggering the seconding the motion. So I did not second the motion. That was not my intent. Actually, I'm against the proposal. I like some of the parts of it, but the part about doxing domain owners is not a good idea. And I think that there should be a third-party platform that actually encourages member participation, but not by giving detailed lists to anyone who asks. The proposal is, I think, way overbroad, so I did not second it. Can you withdraw my second?
So since we've moved into the question period, we are going to go through all of the questions, and then we will go through the comment period, and then I will redo the seconding of the motion at that point in time. So we're going to remain in the question period, and I will ask for the next person to ask their question. Rahi Tajade, you have the floor.
Oh, your confidence is growing too in my. So, other than E and F in this motion, which of A, B, C, and D is CIRA already doing?
Yeah, you got it.
Directed to CIRA, sorry.
I'll ask Ann Butler to answer the question.
Yes, so as I indicated in my initial remarks on the opening of this item, the item A, B, C, and D. So item A, we already participate with member participation and activism through the items that I described in my remarks. On B, publishing information about the process that's available on the website of CIRA. And item C, a formal process for concerns to be addressed and for members to make informed decisions. That is a process members can contact CIRA to express their interests and concerns. And finally, on transparency, we are participating in that transparent process as we speak at this AGM.
Thanks, Anne. Next up, we have David McKee. David, you have the floor.
Thanks, Jill. It's Mackie. It's
Thank you.
No worries. I'm going to admit I'm a little uncomfortable with the way CIRA is going towards what I typically expect to be consensus building and bottom-up engagement. The question to you, Jill, is you mentioned the multi-stakeholder model at the beginning, and outside of the proposal, is ICANN a model that could be used in CIRA where we look for middle ground? Thanks.
That is an interesting suggestion. So I'm actually going to call on Byron to get Byron's thoughts and comments on this. I have had the pleasure of attending a couple of ICANNs and think it is an interesting model. But Byron attends far more than I do and has a little bit more experience. So Byron, did you want to give some insight into that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. We certainly look to ICANN for some of its policies and behaviors and processes vis-a-vis multi-stakeholderism, which effectively is about enabling many different groups of stakeholders to have a voice in various processes. They're very different structurally in terms of how they are actually constructed by bylaw. So there are many things that actually just simply wouldn't apply because of structure, but there are many processes and behaviors and norms that we certainly look to as potential guidance for how we operate CIRA. And we do listen to and engage with numerous stakeholders. Members are a very important specific stakeholder group, and we have a number of processes that you've heard about to engage with them. We also engage with our registrars who sell .ca domain names, with other partners like the university and education sector, like partners in government as well. So we have a range of ways that we engage with different stakeholder groups to try to help us determine the best overall direction for CIRA on a policy from a policy perspective, from a risk perspective, financial perspective, et cetera. So it's never a perfect solution, but we are always trying to find the right balance, listening to all of our different stakeholders.
Thank you, Byron. Something we can consider as we move forward. Next, we have Don Thompson. Don, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you. The last question sort of helped me, but not enough. The secrecy of who has domain names is counter to ICANN, and you have to register them with them. I assume you have to go through them. Every other registry I've used, and I've used several, requires that I maintain my name and address and phone number and email address with them in order to maintain a domain name. So I find the whole discussion around being allowed to see who has what quite interesting, because it is part of the internet that you can see who registered, because the internet is theoretically considered to be public.
Okay, you have exceeded your allotted time for your question.
Okay.
Is there a question? Okay, next up, we have William Stratus. William, you have 30 seconds for your question. William, I see.
Explain the. Could the proposer please explain what his justification is for Part E with the threshold of 250? What is the basis for that?
So the basis is a very straightforward one. I've discussed this with several professors, business people, and the like. And the justification is straightforward. There's a whack of people, people possibly like Robert Hall, who created at the outset a whack of names and have undue influence. My point here is that the .ca domain name belongs to Canada, and individuals can own parts of it, but essentially I look at it as Crown property. And when I look at Crown property, you can find out who owns where and if there is any undue influence. So we have board directors, for example, who sit on the board who are part of that whole registrar community, and they've been there. And there's all sorts of conflicts of, potentially conflicts of interest, whether it be direct money changing hands or influence. And so it's important to show, in privately held companies, publicly listed, they always will tell you who owns all the shares and what all the options are. But here at CIRA, everything is kept in the shade. And I'd like to throw some sunlight on it. There may be something going on or not. I have no idea. Why 250? Anything above 250 suggests it's a business. Anything under 250 could be a hobby, could be speculation. And fair enough if it's a hobby, but if it's, and there's there's over 1,000 names that are role-based. And that affects the whole election register, because I've heard comments that there is some shenanigans going on. I don't know, of course.
The member has exceeded the allotted time for his response. And Madam Chair, we have reached our time limit for the question period.
Thank you. As noted, we will now proceed to comments from members, and then we will go back to the seconding. Do any members have any specific comments related to member proposal number 3? Please click the raise hand button to get in the queue to provide your comment, and note that you will have 1 minute. We have a total of 7 minutes for the comment period. Bridget will alert us when time has been reached. Tyler Trezes, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. My comment is that absolutely section B that is proposed to publish information on the process of submitting proposals for the AGM should be simple and reasonable for CIRA to do. The answer being that, or the response that only one member has shown any interest is actually false, because I've sent emails that have gone unanswered in the past about how to deal with submitting proposals. And further, why not just publish a simple summary of the meeting rules, and that, rather than just saying to deferring to reading the book itself. So it seems very reasonable.
Thank you. Mike Abramzak, you have the floor. I see you have unmuted, but we're not able to hear. Did you want to look to select a different microphone? If you want to leave your hand up, Mike, I'll go to the next person in the queue and then come back to you to see if we can hear you. Next, we have Carrie Brown. Carrie, the floor is yours for 1 minute.
Mr. Barasco raised a point about conflict of interest during board meetings amongst board members. I sat on the board for 9 years. Conflict of interest did come up several times. Whenever it happened, the member that was involved was excused from the meeting and did not participate in that. So I don't see that that's a problem.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is David Michaels. David, you have the floor for 1 minute.
I think that this proposal could be refined significantly. And the problem is we don't have the ability to communicate with one another. Why is it that CIRA can't create a platform or agree to partner with a third-party independent platform where we can have these types of discussions on an ongoing basis and refine proposals so that we can have a bottom-up approach to guiding what CIRA is up to and what CIRA's goals should be? I know that currently it's the top-down approach where CIRA has these meetings across Canada, but I've been to these meetings and you don't get a chance to really communicate with very many people and your ideas don't get heard. So I think there should be more like a social media site for CIRA members. Obviously, you can block people who are harassing and so forth. But I think it would be nice to open it up in some way. DN.ca is trying to do that. Maybe it needs some financial support to make it better. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Daniel Dickinson, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Hello, I just wanted to note that with my hosting company, both my .coms and my .ca domains have the option of privatizing my name in the Whois, and those names are not available to the general public at their whim. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. I'm going to next go to Mike Abramzak, who I see is back in the queue. Mike, I'll give you another chance now to unmute. I see you're unmuted, but unfortunately we still can't hear you. I'll go to next in the queue. Next, Lance Bailey. Lance, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you. Based on what I believe I heard Mr. Barasco say, his motion seems to be based on .ca domains being Crown property. If an individual does not hold that assumption, then the motion falls apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Next, I have Kevin Bloomberg. Kevin, you have the floor for 1 minute. Kevin, I see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Could you try and select a different microphone? I will go to the next person in the queue. David Mackey, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the response I had to the question about multi-stakeholder and looking, potentially for ICANN. And I do appreciate ICANN and CIRA are different structures. I'm actually I got to be careful. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm looking for consensus. I'm looking to try to bring different perspectives together, which is a challenge. Part of the culture of the internet is bottom-up consensus building. So I just want to make note that we have an opportunity as a community to build some consensus, to take this conversation and to move it forward in a way that can make improvements for all of us. And I'll just leave it at that. Take it as you will. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one final comment. William Stratus, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Yes, Chair, this will be very brief. I just want to note that one person's definition of activism can sometimes be another person's definition of chaos. That's a bit of a loaded word here. I would suggest that CIRA's paramount mission needs to be stability, reliability, predictability, and that is obviously sometimes counter to the activist impulses, but necessarily so because this public resource cannot be brought either into disrepute or non-performance in a sense. So I applaud your attempt to skate this issue through the membership today and get to this final vote.
Madam Chair, we've reached our time limit for the comment period.
Thank you. Mr. Barasko, do you have a final comment on proposal number 3 for 1 minute?
Of course I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing that is very important to note is that .ca belongs to Canada, not to CIRA, not the CEO, not the board chair. And so because it is public, but it is, as the Binder letter writes very clearly, it belongs to Canadians and for Canadians, not for individual self-interest. The interesting point is, while CIRA promotes this idea of participation, CIRA doesn't seem to understand that participation is a dialogue, not a monologue. And dialogue meaning that it hears both sides all the time and works through that. The third point is that Nominet had a forum throughout the entire year, allowing members to communicate, and eventually did get together to throw out the board because they were acting untoward. The final point is
the member has exceeded the allotted time for his statement.
Thank you. I believe you've had ample opportunity to make your position known, and it is in order to move to the seconder. As noted, we're going to go back to ensure we get a seconder for the motion. Mr. Barasko is deemed to have moved the motion. Will a member please second the motion?
Don Thompson is recorded as having seconded the motion.
Thank you. Since we've completed the questions and the comments on the period, on the motion at hand, we will now proceed to voting on the motion as set out on your screen. Simply click on your selection. Your vote will automatically be registered. Please vote now.
The motion received 24 votes in favor, 153 votes against, and 15 abstentions.
The motion is not carried. Thank you to our members for their continued engagement. It is now time to close this meeting. A motion to conclude the meeting is now in order. Could I please have somebody move the motion to conclude the meeting?
Paul Desjardins is recorded as having moved the motion to conclude the meeting.
Thank you. Will a member please second the motion?
Bill Sandiford is recorded as having seconded the motion.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the vote to close the meeting. You will see the motion appear on your screen. Simply click on your selection and your vote will automatically be registered. Please vote now.
The motion received 172 votes in favor, 4 votes against, and 4 abstentions.
The motion is carried. The 2024 CIRA AGM is now concluded. That brings us to the end of today's proceedings. There have been some great conversations, and we are appreciative of your participation. As with all AGMs, you will receive a survey asking for your input and feedback following today's event. I encourage everyone to take a few minutes to complete the survey and provide us with your feedback. We will review all feedback and work hard to incorporate as much as possible for future member events and AGMs. Before we go, I'd like to encourage all CIRA members to vote in CIRA's board election. Members are able to vote starting today until Wednesday, October 2nd, so remember to vote and spread the word through your networks. The more CIRA members we have engaged in this process, the better. As a CIRA member, your participation in CIRA governance directly contributes to us helping build a trusted internet for Canadians. Thank you to everyone who joined us today.